is on the Kabbalah. In the Middle Ages, there were two branches of esoteric knowledge. One was the Hermetic, and the other one was the Kabbalistic. So today we're concentrating on the second branch. As we all know, for quite a while we had talked about the Christian Gnostics, and we brought it all the way to the 20th century. So what is the Kabbalah, and why should we talk about it? Let me see. This is the definition of the Kabbalah: the mystic theosophy of the Hebrews. And Ginsburg, who's a Kabbalistic writer, speaks of it as a system of religious philosophy or theosophy, which exercised tremendous influence over the Jews for hundreds of years, and of course in the Middle Ages started to also influence a lot of Christian minds as well. So there are 4 sections to the Kabbalah, and perhaps I shall list them this way. Practical Kabbalah. 2 is literal Kabbalah. 3 is unwritten. And the 4th is dogmatic. Dogmatic Kabbalah. Now, the literal one has 3 sections. And it is Gematria or Gematria. And Notarika. And the 3rd one is the Tumura. And the dogmatic Kabbalah has 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. And Sefer What is the practical Kabbalah about? It basically deals with ceremonial magic, and the literal Kabbalah, which has all these sections, Gematria is the numerical value of the Hebrew words. The Notarikon then is concerned about the formation of these words, and the Temura tells us about the relationship between these words. The 3rd one is the unwritten, and that is always indicative of the secret Kabbalah, transmitted orally only. And in the olden days, of course, we know how that was done. It went from initiate to initiate. Bend your ear and let me whisper to you the truth. And it was not given out to the general public. And dogmatic Kabbalah has 4 sections. The Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation, The Sefer Sephiro is the doctrine of emanations. Metzaref is science of alchemy. And the Zohar is the book of splendor. And that has 5 sections. The first is Itra Rabbah, Greater Holy Assembly. Itra Sutta, Lesser Holy Assembly. Beth Elohim, House of the Gods. And the 5th is the book of the Revolutions of Souls. Now, the traditional origin of the Kabbalah resembles what we were just reading from the Bhagavad Gita, where we heard how that knowledge was transmitted. Can I have the book?
Gita?
Yeah. Behind me. Yeah. My book is behind me?
Oh, your book is not here.
Oh. Excuse me. In the 4th chapter, we heard where Krishna is saying this doctrine, exhaustless doctrine, was taught to Vivasvat, which is the sun. Vivasvat taught it to Manu, Manu to Ishvaku, and Ishvaku passed it on to Rajarsis, the royal sages, and from then it was distributed. Now, here it says, according to the traditional account, the Kabbalah, which is divine wisdom, was taught by God to a company of angels. Adam caught glimpses of these truths and passed his vision to Noah. Noah communicated unto Abraham this knowledge, who then taught it to the Egyptians, and Moses, who gained his knowledge in Egypt, passed it unto his 70 elders. From them, the Kabbalah was transmitted orally, because the truth cannot be written, as we know, until it says the year AD 80. And some of these teachings then at that time were committed to writing. AD 80. So, up to this time, it is transmitted orally. All of it is oral. And at this point, tradition stops and actual history begins, because it was written. And from then, we can complete Krishna's statement from here and say, in the course of time, the mighty art was lost. Because the dogmatic Kabbalah is what is mostly used today. So how does the Theosophical writings say it was distributed? It gives a different origin to the Kabbalah. It says the actual origin of the Kabbalah is different. At the beginning of the 5th root race, which was 1 million years ago, the knowledge that was gained by thousands and thousands of generations of initiated adepts was recorded in written form. What was the language used? The sacerdotal language, Senazar. This is symbolical again. Symbology is used. And from this sacerdotal knowledge recorded, the Sanskrit, this is the mother of Sanskrit, by the way. Senazar is the mother of Sanskrit. The scriptures that were written were drawn from this knowledge. And among these scriptures that were written, number 1 was Chaldean Book of Numbers, the Sefer Zenuta, and Sefer Jetzirah. These books are the ones that were used for the formation of the Kabbalah. The unwritten or the secret was the knowledge of the Chaldees, and these were the Magi, the Chaldean Magi. Who are the Chaldean Magi? The masters. We call them masters today. Then that's what they were addressed as. And according to one of the Theosophical Mahatmas, it says, before the Jews had settled, where were they settled at the beginning? Where Babylonia was. Where is Babylonia? Mesopotamia of our historical times. And where is it? Well, we'll just circulate. It's between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, and it is that Middle East again. Iran is over here, the Arabian desert, this is Turkey up here, so have a look and consider Sumer and Ur that we're going to talk about. And pass it around. And one of the Mahatmas says that the Chaldees, the Babylonians, were thousands of years at that location before the Jews ever went there, and they were at the apex of their occult fame, and this was before the Bronze Age. Now, if you look the Bronze Age up in the dictionary or historical age, it gives us 3,500 years BC to 1,000 years BC. Well, that's a bit ridiculous. First, in order to truly understand knowledge, we need to give humanity the correct chronology as well as the time period. Because in the secret doctrine, it is stated that the Egyptians had settled at the Nile Valley for hundred thousands of years. We're talking immense periods of years. This 3,000, 2,000 does not do justice. According to the secret doctrine again, we are talking about the Babylonians 34,000 years. We're not talking 3,000. So it goes all the way back. And our historical era is 2000, and we're scared to go way back. We just dwarf our age, in other words. We talked about 1 million years for the fifth root race only, and we're the fifth sub of that root, and this is the Iron Age. Now we're talking about this civilization being at the apex before the Bronze Age. So, immense periods of time. So, the knowledge then of the Chaldees that was passed on to Abraham was at the city of Ur, which is on that map. Ur. And you also notice that there is Sumerian culture is on that map too, because who are Sumerians?
Who are Sumerians?
Who are they? We will talk. Moses then acquired his in Egypt, but Egyptians are in existence from India to the Nile Valley 400,000 years ago. So keep that in mind too. And Moses was a priest of the sun, and he lived in the city of Heliopolis. The first person, according to this account, that Moses initiated was his elder brother Aaron, whose name is at the head of the initiated Nabaim, or prophets. From that time on then, schools of prophets started appearing wherever the Jewish communities were. In these schools were taught esoteric science, alchemy, and all of the rigid curriculum that the Eastern Chola is exposed to were also the same for the Jewish schools. And whoever passed the last initiation were known as innocents, infants, or little ones. The first Jews to call themselves Kabalists were the Tanaiim. They're the first Kabbalists. Tanaiim. And they lived 3rd century BC in Jerusalem. They are the first one to address themselves as Kabbalists. 2 centuries later, 3 great Kabbalists appeared. Who are they? The first one is the one that is known as Jesus Christ. And the second one is the great Chaldean teacher Hillel. And the third one is the one that I would like to talk about a little bit. And he is Philo-Judaeus. Okay, the first one is the personality known. I have to erase this. I'm sorry. I don't go over here. Okay. Joshua ben Pandira. This is Jesus Christ, known as Jesus Christ today. The second one is Hillel. You can research these for yourselves. And the third one is Philo-Judaeus. Philo-Judaeus. In his writings, we can find the 3 fundamental propositions of theosophy. And this is a direct quote. He says, where he defined God as an idea free of all mixture, devoid of all combination, which pervades everything and fills the entire universe. Within that unlimited and unnameable principle, he said, is an eternal and immutable law, which is the strong and lasting support of the universe. In addressing man, he says, man is the noblest of all creatures by the reason of the higher element, the soul, which is pure in its essence, the faithful image and copy of the eternal idea. Now, during the siege of Jerusalem in 80 AD, an adept rabbi, this is the only rabbi that this student has come across that is an adept rabbi. The siege of Jerusalem, 80 AD. And you can look it up, it's on the computer, Siege of Jerusalem. This is a siege between the Roman Empire and the Jewish nation that had proclaimed its independence in 66 AD, and the Roman Empire took it back at 80 AD. This is the war referred to. So, during this period, an adept rabbi, we will give his name, Simon ben Jockey, if that is how we pronounce it, that is. It is stated, escaped from Jerusalem, hid himself in a cave for 12 years, and upon his death, 2 of his disciples, Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Abba, collected some of his manuscripts that he had left and compile them into a book. This is the original Zohar. So original Zohar comes from the writings, but you have to also remember he is an adept rabbi. He is limited by his oath as to what he can write on paper and what he will not give out to the world. Zohar, Book of Splendor is what, I'm sorry, I think I took it off, but that's what it is. It is the Book of the Splendor. This is the original Zohar. And for the next 1,000 years, the Zohar was studied in silence and quietude. It was not given to the general public. But in the 11th century, Rabbi Ibn Geberol, also known as Avisebron, produced two important Kabbalistic works. The first one was Fons Vitae, and the second one, Kether Malchuth. And the latter is a superb poem, it is stated, showing the impersonality of the first great principle. And I quote from his work directly. He says, "Thou art one, and thy unity is never diminished, never extended, and cannot be changed. Thou art one, and no thought of mine can fix for thee a limit or define thee. Thou art but not as one existence, for the understanding and vision of mortals cannot attain to thy existence, nor determine for thee the where, the why, and the how." In the 12th century, the theosophical doctrine of emanations were introduced by Rabbi Isaac the Blind and his pupil Rabbi Azariel ben Menachem. In the 13th century, a second Zohar appeared. Second Zohar. This one was written by a Spanish rabbi, and his name was Moses de Leon. The second Zohar was written by him, and he had help with it. And it is stated in the theosophical writings that this Zohar went through a whole bunch of modifications, is how I will express it, but plagiarism, perhaps. And since that time, the teachings, the Kabbalistic teachings, became more available to the general public, and people started picking up the study of it. And the Raymond Lully, being the first Kabbalistic Christian to call himself that. And of course, the Hebrew philosophy has interested a lot of students, and Sir Isaac Newton, Spinoza, Leibniz, all drew attention to the Kabbalah. So there were a whole bunch of students spread around in Europe and America when HP came on the scene. And what happened? A whole bunch of those students joined the Theosophical Society. And I will tell you why in a little bit. So the present day Kabbalah contains a whole bunch of theosophical teachings. The Sefer Zenuta opens with the words, "The book of the concealed mysteries is the book of the equilibrium of balance." What does that refer to? That refers to the circle with a point in it, which is at the beginning of the secret doctrine. It says, "It hangeth in that region which is negatively existent." This region is described as Ein Sof, and HPB has a diagram of it in there. The boundless or limitless. Within Ein Sof, that primordial point, Sephirah, appear, and Sephirah, by dividing itself into two halves, gives us Kokma, which is the male principle, and Binah, which is the female principle. correct? Beginning of incipient life. When it becomes a diameter, it cuts it into two halves. Male, female, positive, negative. Right. From the Secret Doctrine. The first three Sephiroth are purely intellectual in metaphysics, because we have to use our mind power to grapple with these ideals. And according to the Kabbalah, this primordial trinity issues 7 emanations. What does that remind us of from the Secret Doctrine? The 7 rays, correct? 7 emanations. And it says, each emanation differing in its degree of perfection in proportion to its distance from the supreme power determines its position. What are we talking about? Color, the colors. According to the Kabbalah, matter is merely the most remote effect of this emanative energy, and the Secret Doctrine tells us it's concretized spirit. One is the opposite end of the other. And the story of the successive attempts to form universes, which is fully discussed in the Secret Doctrine, is also discussed in the Kabbalah, in the Zohar. It is stated this way: there were old worlds which perished as soon as they came into existence, and formless were called sparks. The sparks are the primordial worlds which could not continue, because the sacred aged had not yet assumed its form of king and queen. What is that? Third race, when we separate it into male and female, right? This is in the Itra Sutta. And many Kabbalists talked about androgeneity, which is what? Hermaphrodite, that we were both at the beginning, because our shape was globular according to the Secret Doctrine, not my words, but it is the same thing here. And in Meyer's Kabbalah, a definite Hebrew name is given to each of these 7 principles. And the doctrine of reincarnation is also a Kabbalistic teaching. In the second book of the Zohar, the soul pleads for freedom from rebirth, saying that she does not wish to be returned to earth, where she will again be subjected to all sorts of pollutions. But the soul is informed that she will be reborn even against its own will. In the third book of the Zohar, the fate of the soul that has broken her connection with her higher self is graphically described this way: all souls which have alienated themselves from the Holy One have thrown themselves into an abyss and have anticipated the time when they are to descend once more upon the earth. Karma is also discussed, and the rebirth of every soul in the Kabbalah is described under the term Gilgulem. You can look it up. The words are different, but the ideas are exactly the same. Well, my time is up. Well, I will finish, but I need to say a few more sentences. The present day Kabbalah is the dogmatic Kabbalah, and it comes from QBL. This is the letters used in the Kabbalah. What does it mean? It means to receive. How does one receive knowledge from written form? Can you receive it? No. So it tells us that it is not a written book. You have to receive it. So that should give us some thought. According to the initiates, it is 7 systems contained in one, and it provides 7 interpretations of every esoteric subject. It says the book which contains the fullest record of these 7 systems is the Oriental Kabbalah. In whose hands is that book? It is in the possession of the Eastern family of initiates, and it's not likely to come out of their hands. Now, the students of Theosophy know that the great teachers do not write their esoteric knowledge. The Hebrew initiates were bound by the same pledge of the secrecy, and Simon ben Jokai, who gave his manuscript for the original Zohar that has disappeared from the viewpoint because we are dealing with the second Zohar that came by from the Spanish writer, was an adept rabbi, and he was sworn to secrecy by the Chaldean oath, and I looked this up and came up with it. It says it is the most sacred of all oaths. The penalty of death followed the breaking of the Chaldean oath or pledge. The oath and the sod, which is the secret learning, are earlier than the Kabbalah or tradition of the Kabbalah, and the ancient midrashim treated fully of the mysteries of sod before they passed it into the Zohar. So it leaves it to you to make your own minds up as to what was written and what it was not. The original Zohar, it says, could not have divulged mysteries that were not given out, whatever else it may have revealed. And the second one was helped in its compilation by Syrian and Chaldean Christian Gnostics. The second Zohar is only a little less exoteric than the Old Testament itself. So we're not given much knowledge in that book. And we need to ask, where are these original books? It says there is a Chinese Kabbalah called Yi King that was written in 2850 BC. In whose hand is it? The Aryan Gnostics, obviously. And it was written in the dialect of the Akkadians. The Akkadians were the ones that came to civilize Babylonia. The Indian sages that came from India all the way to Egypt stopped in particular spots on the way there and civilized certain communities. And it is also stated that a Vatican manuscript of the Kabbalah was possessed by Count de Saint-Germain, another adept. Where is it today? Who knows? HPB once made a very interesting statement, and I directly quote it from the writings. She said, "I am the only Kabalist in America. I am the only Kabbalist in America." Perhaps the student will find that he is seeking this Hermetic philosophy in the Kabbalistic form in the writings that HPB gave to the West. And if he perseveres in his search, learning to read between lines and within the words, he will find 3 of the keys to the mysteries. The last 4 keys, according to the Secret Doctrine 2, page 517, and I quote, "The last 4 keys of the 7 that throw wide open the portals to the mysteries of nature are in the hands of the highest initiates and cannot be divulged to the masses at large, not in this our century at least." So we can hope that it will be released sometime in the future when humanity has perhaps progressed a little bit more in the spirituality line, and we will not do harm to humanity if we are given this knowledge.
But she was talking about the 19th century, and now it's 20th and so on.
Well, who do you think came in 1975? That's again another question each one has to answer. The first time she came to the world, do you think for a moment that she is not involved? A bodhisattva takes an oath To do what? It's just like this Sodalian oath. I will never go into peace alone. I shall stay and help. We read it last week, the Kuan Yin. So that is the oath they take. They have promised to help humanity move in that direction. Yes?
Yes. I would like to have some context here, or review the context, the geopolitical context. And when you say that the Chaldean Maji,
Magi.
all right. So, and then and the period of time you're talking about initially was at least 34,000 years.
Well, according to the writings.
Whatever, but approximately 34,000 years. Okay. Now, and you talk about Babylon. Okay? Are you talking? Very quick question. Are you when you say you talking about Babylon? You talking about the Babylonian Empire, which encompasses more than just. And is Chaldea a location? Is it a geographical location?
It is. It is Babylonia.
It's part of Babylonia. Okay. Now, so your point is that when they say Abraham was a Chaldean, and your point earlier that Abraham, this knowledge was passed on to Abraham.
He was initiated into it.
He was initiated.
Absolutely.
Right.
And sworn to secrecy too.
Okay.
A school of prophets appeared after these initiations took place, correct? Just like the mysteries of Plato, Socrates, and the Gnostic schools that we referred to when we were discussing that subject, this is the second branch, the Hermetic philosophy being the first, and the Kabbalistic being the second, and the root being the same, correct? They come from the same root.
That's what it looks like.
No, it is. The root is always the same. There is only one root. But it divides itself into its suitability to instruct, correct? And it was very interesting when this student looked in the secret doctrine, and I'm thinking, why did the Egyptians disappear from the surface of the earth? For 100,000 years they were in existence. Do you know what the reason was? One of them, at least, is that the Hierophant could not pass his knowledge on. And I'm thinking, why not? He could not find any suitable candidates. And then PBS put this program on where it shows that the Hierophants were the culprits in some ways, because they were trying to usurp the authority of the Pharaoh, and they themselves assumed that role. Very interesting plotting going on in that culture as well. It was very interesting. How true to reality it is, as a student cannot judge, because it didn't come from HPB's writing. I have no idea, but it was there because they are now examining the sarcophaguses and its contents and trying to put a timeline into the Egyptian pharaoh lineage.
Now,
so it was very interesting.
Now, the other part I want to speak to is the
I think you missed the first part. Perhaps did you or not?
No, I didn't miss it.
You didn't miss it. Okay. Okay, what's your question?
I've moved on. I think I understand it. I wanted to get the geopolitical conception together. Now, the dot.
Yes? The Sephira.
Right. And so where is this Trinity? And when, can you go over again the divide into male and female and identify the Trinity that you're talking about?
Okay. There's always the head, correct? You are talking about also a triangle here. There's a head, right? That's the dot. That indicates beginning of manifestation. Incipient state, we were talking about cosmic manifestation. We're going to come out of the absolute into existence. How does this happen?
You mean pre-cosmic or cosmic?
Cosmic.
Okay.
This is the universe in totality in pralaya, at rest. But when you put this in it, we're indicating we're coming out of rest into manifestation.
Okay.
Okay. So in the Kabbalah, it is exactly the same as in the secret doctrine. It just gives it a totally different name. What did we say it was? Sephirah. Sephirah is this dot, and when it becomes a diameter, it cuts the circle into two halves.
And how does it become a diameter?
How do you think it does? It's light energy. It can go in any direction it wishes. The ideal Mahat, the ideology of the universe is in Mahat. Mahat is not this mind. We're talking about the universal mind, which contains the whole program that is going to evolve out of itself into beingness, and then to beingness,
okay,
and then into existence.
Okay. So you're saying that when
it's intelligent.
I understand.
Okay.
And so that process that you just described.
Yes.
For the division, or for the dot to become for the circle there to be a diameter, right? Now,
well, that is just for understanding purposes.
I understand. But for understanding purposes, you're talking about a process that would be a reflection upon itself. Is that, I mean, the only way you can come from pre-cosmic state of rest,
okay,
and then into a manifestation where you could identify that as a dot.
Yeah, she
and
calls
then,
it.
Okay, I know. And then moving from that dot to a diameter.
Okay, what is the dot?
The dot is the manifestation of the energy that's contained in the state of rest.
But what is it?
It is a breathing out. It's a.
What is it? It's light.
Well, it could be light. I mean, we call it light.
World,
it's energy.
In your world, it is called light.
Well, okay, but it's energy.
Behind this light stands the central spiritual sun, okay, which is a spiritual center it comes from. However, it emits a ray, and this is the ray.
What's the ray?
The light ray. It emits a ray out of itself, and it is this ray here that comes from the unmanifested into the manifested. And that is called Sephirah.
Okay.
In the Kabbalah, and when it goes into two halves, the male aspect becomes Kokma, and the female aspect becomes Bina.
That's according to the Kabbalah.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So the secret doctrine says the same thing.
Well,
it's the same. It's the same.
Right. But my question now is identify the Trinity.
We just did.
So if I look at the circle.
Kokma.
Okay. Come on.
Bina.
Okay. So those three entities.
Kether is the head in the Kabbalah. Kether, Kokma, Bina.
Translates to like wisdom.
I got that.
Kether, Kokma, Bina. These are Kabbalistic terms.
Okay.
It's the same thing. It's not any different.
Comment.
Down on earth. Yes?
Well, just not questions but comments basically, and thanks for comparative theology and comparative mythology. That thing about Abraham, that word again, if you go into the theosophical definitions, anti-Brahmins, the Jews, what becomes the Jews is initially a caste of Indians, that were brick makers pretty much, and they were sort of like persecuted by the Brahmins, and they migrated eventually to the city of Ur, where the Jews say that their grand patron Abraham begins, but if you get locked down to literally Abraham as an individual man, which it is not, you know, and then you go, and Melchizedek is another name that comes up about, because Abraham was blessed, you know, and just to toss it out. And another thing too about, according to tradition, when you say the Jews taught the Egyptians, but the Egyptian civilization was thousands of years older than the Jews. You know, Abraham brought something like 70 Jews into Egypt, and 400 years later they left out with all that Egyptian metaphysics and stuff like that. So it's, thank goodness for comparative mythology and all these other things, because you can see who borrowed from who.
Okay.
Just want to toss that out.
The secret doctrine. This, what is expressed here today, is according to this student's understanding of what is given in the Theosophical writing. In the secret doctrine, we are told the Jewish nation is a branchlet, and it is 8,000 years old. And you need to go to these sources yourselves and read it for
So you're
yourself.
distinguishing the
And
Jews
do
from
not
the Hebrews?
accept what is being said here today, even by this student,